Shout at me again, and I'll end you. The waitress warns the billionaire. What happens next will shock you. What if a single moment of courage could change 2 lives forever? At Romano's Diner on 5th Street, the lunch rush was in full swing when 42-year-old billionaire James Patterson stormed through the glass doors, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the worn linoleum floor. His phone was pressed to his ear, and his voice carried the sharp edge of a man accustomed to getting his way. "I don't care what the board thinks," he barked, completely ignoring the gentle hostess trying to seat him. 36-year-old waitress Lucy Martinez had been working double shifts all week, her feet aching in shoes she couldn't afford to replace. She'd seen his type before, wealthy, demanding, treating service workers like they were invisible. But when James snapped his fingers at her and shouted for immediate service while she was helping an elderly customer, something inside Lucy's tired heart finally snapped too. "Shout at me again, and I'll end you," she said quietly, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. "Where are you watching from today?" The entire diner fell silent. James Patterson, worth $3 billion and accustomed to immediate obedience, stared at the woman who'd just threatened him. Lucy's hands shook as she realized what she'd done, but she didn't look away. Her grandmother had raised her better than to let anyone treat her like dirt, no matter how much money they had in their bank account. James had built his empire from nothing, clawing his way up from a childhood in Detroit's poorest neighborhoods. Success had hardened him, and he'd learned that showing weakness meant losing everything. But something in Lucy's eyes, not fear, but dignity, made him pause. She looked exhausted, her uniform wrinkled from the long shift, yet she stood her ground with the quiet strength he recognized from his own mother, who'd worked 3 jobs to keep their family afloat. Lucy had been at Romano's for 8 years, ever since her divorce left her struggling to support her teenage daughter alone. The regulars loved her, she remembered their orders, asked about their grandchildren, and always had a kind word during difficult times. She'd never spoken to a customer like this before, but watching him dismiss the elderly Mr. Henderson, who'd just lost his wife and came in daily just for human contact, had been the final straw. "I apologize," James said slowly, surprising everyone, including himself. "That was inappropriate." He slid into the booth where she directed him, his expensive suit looking out of place among the faded red vinyl and cracked formica tables. Lucy approached cautiously, notepad ready, trying to steady her breathing. "What can I get you?" she asked, her voice still tight with anger. James looked at the menu, then at her tired face. "What do you recommend?" It wasn't what he'd planned to say. Usually, he ordered quickly and efficiently, treating restaurants like fuel stops. But something about her defiance had awakened a memory of his mother standing up to his father's boss, who'd tried to dock her pay unfairly. Lucy blinked, caught off guard by the simple question. In 8 years, no customer had ever asked her opinion about the food. "The meatloaf is good," she said carefully. "Marie's been making it the same way for 20 years. The lunch rush continued around them, but something had shifted in that small moment of unexpected politeness. James ordered the meatloaf and coffee, black. As Lucy walked away, he found himself watching how she moved through the diner, checking on the elderly man she'd been helping, refilling coffee for a construction worker without being asked, smiling genuinely at a young mother struggling with twin toddlers. She wasn't just serving food, she was caring for people. His phone buzzed with urgent messages about the merger that would close 3 factories, putting hundreds of people out of work. The numbers made sense on paper: profit margins, efficiency, shareholder value. But sitting in this worn diner, watching Lucy slip an extra bread roll onto an elderly woman's plate when she thought no one was looking, those numbers felt different somehow. When Lucy brought his meal, her hands were steadier. "You're not from around here," she observed, setting down the plate carefully. "How can you tell?" James asked, genuinely curious. "The way you hold your phone, like it's life or death. Most folks here know how to put it down long enough to eat." She paused, then added more gently, "Plus, that watch probably costs more than I make in 2 years." James looked at his Rolex, a symbol of everything he'd achieved. "You're probably right." He took a bite of the meatloaf, surprised by how good it was. Real comfort food, nothing like the fancy restaurants where he usually ate. It's been a long time since anyone stood up to me like you did. Lucy's expression softened slightly. My grandmother always said you can tell a person's character by how they treat people who can't do anything for them. She hesitated, then added, I probably shouldn't have said what I did. I need this job. Why? James asked, and the simple question opened something in Lucy she hadn't expected. My daughter's starting college next year. She's brilliant, valedictorian, full scholarship to state university. But there's still costs. She stopped, realizing she was sharing too much with a stranger. James nodded slowly. The weight of the factory closure felt heavier now. He thought about the hundreds of parents like Lucy who'd lose their jobs, their children's dreams hanging in the balance. If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. As Lucy turned to leave, James's phone rang with news that would change everything. The merger deadline had been moved up. He had to make the decision today, and 3 factories full of people like Lucy hung in the balance. James stared at his phone as his assistant's voice crackled through. The board needs your decision in 2 hours. Sign the merger papers or we lose the deal entirely. The factories would close by Christmas, just 8 weeks away. Hundreds of families would face the holidays without income, without hope. Lucy couldn't help but notice the change in his demeanor as she refilled his coffee. The confident businessman had been replaced by someone who looked genuinely troubled. Bad news? She asked softly. Life-changing news, James said quietly. For a lot of people. He found himself telling her about the merger, about the impossible choice between his company's survival and the livelihoods of people he'd never met. It's just business, he said, but the words felt hollow in this place. Lucy sat down across from him, her shift finally over. My ex-husband used to say that. It's just business, Lucy. Nothing personal. He said that when he cleaned out our savings account and disappeared with his secretary. She stirred sugar into her own coffee with tired movements. But here's the thing about business. It's never just numbers on paper. Those numbers are someone's mortgage payment, someone's kid's medicine, someone's hope for tomorrow. James had built walls around his heart to make tough decisions, but Lucy's words cut through them like her earlier defiance had cut through his arrogance. What would you do? He asked, a question he'd never posed to anyone below the executive level. I'd remember where I came from, Lucy said simply. You didn't get that expensive watch by forgetting what it feels like to worry about money. She studied his face, seeing past the perfect haircut and tailored suit. You grew up poor, didn't you? James nodded, surprised by her perception. Detroit. My mother worked 3 jobs. Then you know what Christmas looks like when there's no paycheck coming. Lucy's voice was gentle but firm. Those factory workers have been loyal to your company for years. They've got children they're trying to raise right, just like your mother raised you right. The weight of 300 families pressed down on James's shoulders. He thought about his mother, who'd never missed a payment on their tiny apartment, who'd sewn patches on his clothes and called them custom designs to make him feel special. Have you ever faced a choice between doing what's profitable and doing what's right? Let us know in the comments below. James pulled out his phone, his finger hovering over the call button. Whatever he decided in the next hour would define not just his company's future, but who he really was. James dialed his assistant's number with hands that weren't quite steady. Cancel the merger, he said, his voice growing stronger with each word. Tell the board I'm restructuring instead of selling. Sir, are you sure? The profit margins. I'm sure. Set up meetings with the factory floor supervisors. I want to hear directly from the workers about operational improvements. James looked at Lucy, who was watching him with something like hope in her tired eyes. And schedule a company-wide meeting for next week. It's time I remembered what this business was built on. Lucy felt tears she'd been holding back for weeks finally spill over. You're really going to save their jobs? I'm going to try to save the company and the jobs, James corrected. It won't be easy. We'll need to find new efficiencies, maybe take smaller profits for a while. But there's got to be a better way than throwing people away like yesterday's newspaper. As word spread through the diner that the billionaire at table 6 had just saved 3 factories from closing, something beautiful happened. The construction worker bought James's coffee. The elderly woman Lucy had been helping earlier shuffled over to shake his hand with fingers bent from arthritis but strong with gratitude. "My grandson works at the plant," she whispered. "Thank you for giving him a chance to keep his family fed." James found himself surrounded by the quiet warmth of ordinary people whose lives he'd just changed. These weren't board members or investors seeking profit. They were parents and grandparents, people who knew the value of hard work and honest wages. Lucy's shift supervisor, Maria, approached their table. "Lucy never told us she was friends with anyone so important," she said with a knowing smile. "We just met today," James admitted. "But she taught me something I'd forgotten." "What's that?" Maria asked. "That being successful and being human aren't mutually exclusive." James looked at Lucy, whose presence had somehow reminded him of every lesson his mother had tried to teach him about dignity, respect, and compassion. Lucy stood up, suddenly shy. "I should get home to help my daughter with her college applications." "Wait," James said, pulling out his business card. "My company has an internship program. If she's interested in business or economics." If you've been moved by this story of second chances and human kindness, please subscribe for more heartwarming tales. The future was beginning to look different than either of them had imagined when this day began. 6 months later, Lucy walked into the gleaming conference room at Patterson Enterprises, wearing a crisp new business suit. She'd been promoted to Director of Employee Relations after James discovered her natural talent for connecting with people and solving problems. The scared, exhausted waitress had been replaced by a confident woman who'd found her true calling in helping create a workplace where people mattered as much as profits. The company's transformation had been remarkable. By listening to workers on the factory floor, they discovered inefficiencies that no consultant had ever identified. Productivity increased while costs decreased. More importantly, employee satisfaction soared when people felt valued and heard. Lucy's daughter Rebecca had thrived in the company's internship program, working directly with James on community outreach initiatives. She'd changed her major from pre-med to business ethics, inspired by witnessing how one person's choice to do the right thing could ripple outward to change countless lives. "The quarterly reports are in," Rebecca announced as she entered the conference room where her mother and James were reviewing expansion plans. "Profits are up 18%, and we've hired back everyone who was laid off last year from the factory closures." James smiled, remembering the angry man who'd stormed into Romano's diner all those months ago. That person felt like a stranger now. Success felt different when it was measured not just in dollars, but in the security and dignity of the people who made it possible. Lucy looked out the window toward downtown, where Romano's diner still served the best meatloaf in the city. They'd returned there every few weeks, James learning the names and stories of the regulars, Lucy watching him discover the joy of genuine human connection. Their friendship had been built on that foundation of mutual respect that began when she'd had the courage to stand up to him. "You know," James said thoughtfully, "my mother would have liked you. She always said the strongest people are the ones who stay kind even when life gets hard." "She raised a good son," Lucy replied. "It just took him a while to remember it." As the sun set over the city, casting golden light through the conference room windows, both of them reflected on how a single moment of unexpected courage had changed everything. Lucy had learned that standing up for what's right sometimes leads to opportunities beyond your wildest dreams. James had rediscovered that true wealth comes not from what you accumulate, but from what you give back to the world. The young woman who'd served him coffee and harsh truth in equal measure had become his most trusted advisor, and the billionaire who'd forgotten his humanity had become the kind of leader his mother would have been proud to know. Sometimes the most important business decisions aren't made in boardrooms, they're made in diners, by people brave enough to speak truth to power and wise enough to listen when it matters most. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments about times when standing up for what's right changed your life, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Thank you for taking this journey with us today.